Preparation. Doing a great work a stone at a time. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. As you take a look at your bulletin, the front is the theme for our year in 2018. It says that doing a great work together, together, together. Why don't you say that word with me? Let's do it together. Together. One more time. Together. Because that's how God's honored. That's how He's glorified. You don't need the one-man show stuff. He wants us to come together and do something that's greater than what we can do, that only He can do, and it becomes a great work. And so, I'm going to talk about how that's going to happen. I'm going to spend the next few weeks doing this, and this is our second message, challenging the church, because I believe January is kind of what we do for housekeeping sermons for our church, getting ready for the new year. And I want you to get that and understand that. So preparation's a part of it. Family pulled up at the last remaining campsite. Dad jumped out, Mom jumped out, the kids jumped out. They unloaded the SUV, the trailer, and they were putting up the tent. The girls are setting up camp, setting up the stove, and it was an amazing thing to see, so much and they gathered the firewood, and it just was an impressive sight to see. They took care of everything, got it ready to go. A couple of the campers couldn't help but notice what took place in just a short amount of time. And so one of the campers went up to the dad and said, "Man, that was an amazing display of teamwork. What's your secret?" He said, "I told them nobody can go to the bathroom till camp is set up." We all need motivation, get stuff done. Well, we want to talk about preparation today because I want to give you the landscape today. I want to give you kind of an understanding of how we get started in a great work. What are the things that are essential in a great work? And what do we expect? And I'll fill in more flesh to them as we go on the next few weeks. But I want to just give you that foundation upon which we'll put our stones and watch God do something great here at First Baptist. Here's what I know as I look at this. When the hand of God joins with the willing hearts of His people, the great work will begin. I understand that. God's able. He can do it. He's just waiting for us to join Him, which is kind of the foundational teaching of experiencing God. Find out where God's working and join Him. Man, that's what He does. That's when He does things that are beyond our imagination. So we look at that. And so understanding that God's part in the great work is to provide the resources, produce the people, and protect the workers and the work. There's three parts to a great work. The first one is God's part. He said, God's part will be taken care of. God's part is simply this. He's going to do something great in every aspect of the work. So I want to look at these verses with me as we go through. And I want to go back and read what we did last week, just the last part of the verse in Nehemiah chapter 1, that last part of verse 11. Please grant me success. Now, Nehemiah's been praying about the wall that was torn down in Jerusalem. And it was a disgrace to the people and to God. His reputation was at stake. And so he's praying, God, we got to do something about the wall. I want to do something about the wall. And he said, now look, he says, please grant me success today by making the king favorable to me. Put it into his heart to be kind to me. Now, that was from last week. All right? 4 months later, did you catch this? 4 months later. See, the problem sometimes with us is we think God's like instant grits. We pour it in the bowl, turn up the heat, and there we got it in 3 minutes. No. God doesn't pay attention to our clock or our calendar. He's looking at His plan. He's constantly orchestrating for His plan to be completely effective and to bring glory to His name. So 4 months have passed since Nehemiah started praying. And I'm sure he's wondering, God, when's it going to happen? God, when's this going to take place? God, when do we see great things happen? When are you going to do something? You ever thought those things, guys? Yeah, amen. Oh, Lord, where are you, God? Come on now. I've been talking about you, and now, where are you? 4 months have passed. That had to be a long 4 months, don't you reckon? That season of nothing happening, kind of tough. But then, early the following spring, 4 months later, in the month of Nisan, during the 20th year of the king of Artaxerxes' reign, he was a king, man, he was a pagan king, believed in many gods, he was awful. Now that's why you got to understand when Nehemiah is saying, God, you got to do something with his heart. If I'm going to get out of here, you got to do something with him. Because I'm a cupbearer. I'm a slave. Here's what he said. Okay, I was serving the king his wine. He was a cupbearer. Now the cupbearer was real important to the king. You know why? He always made sure it wasn't poison. That was his job. His job was to sample it and go, that's good stuff. Or, man, you're going to die. You see, if the cupbearer died, the king knew it was bad. That's a tough job to have. But he was the cupbearer to the king. He brought the wine to the king. And I had never before appeared sad in his presence. Why is that important? Because if you're sad, you might think something's wrong with the cup. So when you got before the king, you was all smiles. Man, it's a great day. Man, this is awesome. Good wine. He was all smiles, but he said, today, I was sad. My countenance just wouldn't let me smile. My heart was burdened. 4 months I've been praying. 4 months I've been wondering. 4 months I've been waiting, and I'm wondering if it's ever going to change and if what's going to happen. And it just got the best of me, and I was sad. It has showed up in my countenance. So the king asked me, why are you looking sad? That's a big question, because the king says, you've never looked sad before. What's in that cup? What do you know I don't know? What's wrong with you? King was very observant. He's going, hey, what's going on? You're not smiling today. You don't look sick to me. You must be deeply troubled. Say, okay, you're not sick, so what's bothering you? What's in that cup? Is that what's bothering you? Then I was terrified. Don't you love Nehemiah's honesty? God does a lot of great things with honesty. He does amazing things with it. So as I look at this, he said, man, I was terrified. Let's look further. But I replied, long live the king. I bet the king was glad to hear that. We good. Long live the king. How can I not be sad? For the city where my ancestors are buried is in ruins, and the gates have been destroyed by fire. I'm heartbroken, king. Then the king asked, watch this. Guys, you got to see this. Then the king asked, this pagan, idolatrous king says, well, how can I help you? Guys, you got to see something here. This is the hand of God that moves the hearts of kings. When he prayed in the last part of the verse of the first chapter, God, you got to do something with this guy because he really doesn't believe in you, and he's not going to like this, and he really doesn't care about Jerusalem. Man, you got to do something. And guess what? God did. I'm always amazed when we ask God for things in prayer and he does it, we act surprised. Like, where'd that come from? How'd that happen? The king said, he asked the question, well, how can I help you, my man? What can I do for you? Do you see what just happened here? Remember the point we talked about, that God's part of the great work is to provide the resources, produce the people, and protect the workers and the work. The first thing God did was provide an open door with the king. He created an open door, a door so big he could drive an RV through. Man, it's big. Couldn't miss it. Couldn't miss it. God said, I got this, Nehemiah. Here is the day you've been waiting for. Man, I've opened the door. That's what God does. He opens doors. And if he doesn't open the door, you're stupid to push. Because it don't matter how hard you push if you don't want to open the door. But if you just sit there and say, Lord, I'm waiting on that open door. Now we're praying and we're doing stuff, we're being faithful, but all of a sudden the door opens, the opportunity's there. And God says, hey man, I give it to you. He provided not only this, and I'll talk about this later on, he provided an open door. The king, and now Nehemiah has found favor with his king. The king says, man, I like you, Nehemiah. You've been the best cupbearer I ever had. Man, and I want to tell you, how can I help you? See, that's not normal. King don't do that. But I'm glad we serve an awesome God that does more than normal. How great thou art. Look at this. He turned the heart of a king. And later on, how good he provides resources. We understand when we do a great work, God provides the resources. He provides the king's favor, and then he uses the king's timber later on. Nehemiah says, I need some building materials. You got it. God's faithful. Great is his faithfulness. He provides from his resources. And incidentally, just so you'll know, God is never broke. Ever. He doesn't have a stock market crisis. He doesn't lose in the 401k. He just is never broke. As a matter of fact, he has riches and glory that he will never exhaust. But also, he does something, he produces the people. He produced Nehemiah. That's the beginning of the story. He's going to produce a lot more people. We'll talk about that in sermons to come. But he produces people to get the job done. He does it in the most amazing ways. He reaches out and touches people. First of all, he personally calls people to salvation. He calls people to know beyond a shadow of a doubt they're saved. He calls you to a personal salvation with him through Jesus Christ. And so that's the first call God issues to anyone. Then he calls those who've been saved to serve, to get up to speed and serve his kingdom for his glory. Every person who's been saved should be serving the Lord somehow, okay? Somehow. Now, well, spiritual gifts and all those things differ, but you should be serving the Lord in some way because you've been saved by grace, and you should be grateful and you serve. And so all of a sudden, he's personally calling people to show up and serve because they've been saved. Because it is a special Sunday here and we celebrate the sanctity of life, I want to share a story with you about how God does that. See, I'm excited that, can I just say this? I'm excited we had a president historically showed up and spoke and supported the March for Life. Would you say amen to that? Amen. Man, because you thought they hated him before that. But anyway, he personally calls people to salvation. I was got a call from a young lady I had never really met. She said, I need to come by and talk to you. She was crying over the phone. I said, well, please come by the office. We'll talk. And she shows up, and I got to meet her for the very first time. She's crying, and she's nervous, and she's scared. She doesn't know what's going to happen. She's talking to a pastor. She had zero church background. Never been in church. And she said, I got to talk to you. I need to know what to do. Yes, ma'am. Well, how can I help you? Well, I'm dating one of your guys she was in college and he was in college, and I'm dating one of the guys from your church, and we've been dating a pretty good while, and now I'm pregnant. She broke out crying. So what do I do? What do I do? I began to share with her some things. I said, okay, you know where you are, and I want to talk to you about what really needs to happen in your life. Number one, I certainly think you keep the child, because that's a gift from God. That child's got gifts and things it's going to bring to this world and bring to the table that no other child will do. Fearfully and wonderfully made. So you need to embrace that. But I'm so embarrassed. So ashamed. What's his parents going to say? Ain't your problem today. Let me tell you what really matters. Is that you have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I know you have no church background. You've told me that. So let me share with you what I want you to know, that God loves you. And he desires to have a relationship with you and to forgive you and to change you and to make you a different kind of person. We talked for a little while. She had questions and we talked more. And then she just broke down and cried and cried and cried. I said, would you like to make that decision today to know that you're forgiven? Yes, sir, I would. That college young lady trusted Jesus Christ in my office that day. She kept that baby. I watched that baby graduate this past year. And child had 2 more sisters. They were awesome in the church life. They were student leaders, and they participated in evangelistic efforts. They learned how to share a faith testimony. It's incredible. This young lady was so amazing. As I watched her grow in her faith, I got to baptize her when she was 10 years old. And then I watched her grow in Jesus. And then I got to baptize her other sister. And then I got to baptize the last one. But let me tell you, I did that marriage ceremony, and the church was very supportive. And about 4 years after they were married, I got to lead her husband to the Lord. And 3 years ago, I got to ordain him as a deacon. What I'm telling you is God produces people in the most amazing ways. And I'm so glad I got to pastor a church and knew how to be redemptive and restoring. Man, I ain't got to talk to you about pro-life. We should be pro-life, right? I ain't got to do that. That's what you do on the courthouse steps for the world to know. I want to tell you that the church needs to have the understanding, the reputation that, man, we are redemptive and we're restoring. And we're going to love those that are broken, those that are hurt, and those that have failed, because God loves them. And we can bring restoration to their life and give them a new beginning with a different ending. And so I'm here to tell you, God calls people from all walks of life and all kinds of failures to be productive for his kingdom. And that lady today, that mom, is so active in the church and does so many mission endeavors and does things and stands bold for the Savior, shares her faith. And 2 years ago, she came forward. I preached a sermon about kind of what you do in January at this time, but she said, I want to tell you thank you for telling me to keep my child. I have great respect for those who keep their child. Amen. You understand? Hey, understand that. Great respect, great appreciation. And I mean, I'm on your team. I'll support you. If we're going to talk about pro-life, we need to do the other part of it. And be supportive and redemptive and restoring. God produces people. And he protects the work and the workers. He protects the work and the workers. That's God's part. He says, I got the resources you need. You don't have to sweat that, worry about that. Get high blood pressure over it. Get an ulcer over it. I got it. I'm never broke. He says, I got people I'll bring to you. You won't believe where they'll come from, but they'll show up on your doorstep, and there you become redemptive and supportive and restoring, and you do these things. And I'm going to send you people from every background, every walk of life, because I can use them to build something for my glory. And so he brings people to us, and he produces people to show up to do a great work. Our God doesn't do mediocrity. He does great. And so I see that he protects his workers and his work. I will tell you something that influenced my ministry way, way back there. I was a young preacher, and my dad had preaching. He was a pastor, and it was a hard life for him. He suffered a lot of pain, got a lot of scars. But we all do. We all got bruises, guys. No matter who we are. We all got bruises. But I remember hearing Charles Stanley talk about this at a pastor's conference. He said, when I was a little boy, my granddaddy was a preacher, and I would go and hear him preach and be at his church. And one day, one of those days he preached pretty hard, and he made a couple of the men really mad. And as he was at the back door shaking hands, they went by and said, "Preacher, we're going to get you when you come down the street. We're waiting for you. We don't like what you said." And they walked on out. Little Charles said, I heard what they said, and I didn't know I didn't know what to think. And my grandfather he's kind of locking up the church, and he's putting the hymnals back in place, and he's just moving around. He's not saying anything. And I said, "Granddaddy, what you going to do? What you going to do? What's going to happen? What you going to do? What you going to do? Granddaddy, what's going to happen? Aren't you worried? What those men going to do?" He said, "Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. God's got that. God's got that." What's going to happen, Granddaddy? God's got that. I go out the door and turn the final key at the front church door and walk down the steps, walking down the sidewalk toward the street corner, a block away. All of a sudden, they hear a horrendous crash. As they make their way to the street corner to see all the commotion, a car had lost control and killed those two men waiting on the street corner for that preacher. I heard that when I was a young preacher, and God told me, "Son, I always got your back." When I was ordained, they prayed over me, "No weapon formed against me will prosper." And I've been doing this a long time. And that's been true. God's just that great. I say that when we begin a great work, He will take care of us. He will take care of us. Oh, we ain't going to make everybody happy, especially the devil. I mean, let's be honest, if we ain't doing nothing, he ain't going to bother us. But you know what I'm excited about? We're doing something. We're doing something. So he goes, okay, here we go. Let me move on. I stayed there too long. Come on. Our part in the great work is to pray and to proceed with faith and enthusiasm. God's part, He's got His part covered. He does it perfectly. We have to work on ours. Our part, great work, is to pray and to proceed with faith and enthusiasm. Here's what Nehemiah said these next few verses. With a prayer. Now watch this. The king had said, "What can I do for you?" And Nehemiah says, with a prayer to the God of heaven. Meaning, what do I say, God? You know, he's saying, the moment's come. God, help me say the right thing. Can I tell you, our part in a great work is, number one, knowing how to pray constantly. Not praying every moment of the day, but being in such a walk with God and being in such a spirit of communion with God, we can pray on a moment's notice. Meaning, I got to pray right now. Got that bad phone call. Somebody this just happened. I got to be able to pray right now. I mean, if you got to stop and spend 30 minutes confessing, you're not in a state of prayer. You're behind. So he said, look, he said, God, give me the word. What do I say? Guys, we got to be a people that know how to pray constantly. Can I tell you what just thrilled my soul? And help me, I think I got this right. I saw that we had to order 15 more books for our prayer class. Had to order an additional 15 books because 15 more people showed up than we thought that signed up. It's about 25, 30. Hi, guys, shoot, you give me 25 people that want to pray. We'll see God do some amazing stuff. A couple of those I already know and been a part of a class before. Man, we got some people that can pray heaven down. So, yeah, great works can happen because you got to pray. And we're making the steps to do that. That's part of our foundation, and I'm so excited for that. So, with prayer to the God of heaven, I replied. Now, watch this. If it pleased the king, and if you are pleased with me, he already said he was. If you're pleased with me, your servant. He's not being arrogant. He's not being obnoxious. He said, I'm still your servant. Hey, I ain't trying to, I'm glad to be your cupbearer. I'm still your servant. But he said, if you would give me a vacation, send me to Judah to rebuild the city where my ancestors are buried. The king with the queen sitting beside him asked, how long will you be gone? Isn't God good? Okay, how long a vacation you need? When will you return? Now the king made it very clear, I ain't sending you back. I'm letting you go back for a period of time. I expect you to show back up. And so after I told him how long I would be gone, the king agreed to my request. Do you not see the hand of God on this? That's how God works in all our lives. And whether it's business, family, church, that's how it works. And so I also said to the king, now here's what I say. Remember, our part is to pray and to act by faith and enthusiasm. I want you to see this guy's faith, and I want you to see his enthusiasm. He says, okay. I also said to the king, he said, first of all, he said, I want a vacation. And the king says, okay, I'll do that vacation thing. How long? Well, I'll be gone few months. All right. If it please the king, watch. Now he's operating in faith. If it please the king, let me have letters addressed to the governors of the province west of the Euphrates River, instructing them to let me travel safely through their territories on my way to Judah. He said, now I'm being businesslike now. I got to have some papers. I got to have a passport. So I need your approval. I need to know that you're letting me go. Can I tell you, God, our enthusiasm never needs to be stupid or foolish. Our enthusiasm needs to be controlled by God's boundaries and guidelines, and also doing things the right way. And Nehemiah said, man, I got to have papers or I'll get in trouble. So he got the papers. But he's asking this. He's just saying, okay, you give me vacation, will you give me a passport and kind of protection as I go, which God provides, okay? And look, it doesn't end there. It doesn't end. And please give me a letter addressed to Asaph, the manager of the king's forest, instructing him to give me timber. I will need it to make beams and the temple fortress, for the city walls, and for a house for myself. Wow. Look at this. Can you love this man's faith? Hey, I need a vacation. I need letters of protection. And one more small thing. I need building materials. Guys, you're saying, listen, this is a pagan king who has no regard for the God of Nehemiah. He doesn't see any, but he goes, and Nehemiah by faith is saying, would you give me some building materials? When you learn to pray, you ask God with faith, and God begins to do things we can't do on our own. That's when he gets the glory. And so he's going, all right, man, I got this, and here's what we're going to do. And he said, I got you. And the king granted these requests. Why? because the gracious hand of God was on me. If God's people will get in position that God's hand can rest upon them, there's no limit to what we can do. When I came to the governors of the province west of the Euphrates River, I delivered the king's letter to them. The king, I should add, had sent along army officers and horsemen to protect me. Gosh, this is awesome. King says, I'm going to make sure nothing happens to you, so I'm going to send an armed guard. God's doing his part, isn't he? God always does his part. He's just waiting for us to join him and do our part. And we come together as a body of believers, and we join our hands, and shoulder to shoulder we go and become one for the glory of God. And we begin to see him do great, great things. Can I say this just so you'll know? Man, in a couple of weeks, we're going to start something on Sunday night called Tell Somebody. It's going to be basically, I'm going to be talking about how we evangelize, what we can do, because one of the great things we're going to do is establish intentional evangelism, where one night a week we're going to go out and talk to people. We're going to become aggressive. You see, Pastor, I've heard that doesn't work anymore. Guys, I did it for 16 years. Every Monday night. Clockwork. And for 5 years, we were in the state of Georgia's top baptism for medium churches for 5 years. I'm not talking about stuff I've read in a book, guys. I'm not talking about what somebody told me. I have seen what God can do if we'll just show up and join him and let him do something miraculous in us. Do you realize? Say, Pastor, why are you so enthusiastic? Well, number one, I don't know what it'd be, but when it comes to God, you should be enthusiastic. Can I tell you what moves my heart? Last December, a year ago, and I walked through those doors and met with Barbara Capps. And she showed me a tour of the church, and she said, and when we came in here, I saw this beautiful auditorium, and it is a beautiful auditorium. And I said, how many come to worship? She told me the number, and I could tell it saddened her. It saddened me because I realized you had a lot of empty seats. Thankfully, we don't have that many empty seats. We've diminished some of those empty seats. Still got some room to go. But she said, but at one time we had 500 people coming. I looked around, and this is what got me to tell you guys. I'm just telling you. I'm sitting here, and I've come down just because God wanted me to be obedient. And I said, guys, I'm not looking for a job. I don't need a job, but I'm trying to see what God will do. But I walked around here, and God told me, I can put 500 in here again. I can put 500 in here again. I turned to Barbara and said, Barbara, we can have 500 again. Amen. Thank you. Because that's true. You see, amen means you agree with me, incidentally. That's a Greek term for it. Yeah. Guys, I don't even know if it's a whole 500, but I'd like to try. I'm looking for 400 Easter. Our attendance is up 32%. Attendance is up. And man, well, God's doing some great things. We have baptized people, and I mean, it's incredible what God's doing. He's not even through yet. Go out there, and across from the office door, you're going to see our new member board. You ought to go look at that before you leave today. You just need to go look at it and go, thank you, Jesus. Wow. Can't help but be enthusiastic because I know what God can do. Man, we're going to remodel a nursery. That's going to happen pretty quick. And getting the old building restored to house people, because it's a shame to have buildings we're not using. Because we're going to need the space. We're going to build a ministry. Stone at a time, great work. building, growing Sunday school. We got a clinic coming. Man, in February, you need to be a part of that. We're trying to figure out how to build the wall for the glory of God. Man, let me move on. The reality of God's hand. That's just God's hand was upon me. Let me go to this last thing. Briefly, I'm going to say this because I'm going to talk about this in a whole sermon. There's Satan's part. Satan's part is to discourage and disrupt the great work. He doesn't like a great work. And he will do a lot of stuff. And that's why we need to pay attention. I'm going to tell you something. Let me read this to you. But when Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah, the Ammonite official, heard of my arrival. Now, he showed up in Judah now. He showed up with timber. He showed up with an armed guard. He showed up with papers. And these guys heard of his arrival, and they were very displeased that someone had come to help the people of Israel. Man, they were like, we like things the way they were. We like things like we just like things. We don't want anything. We like it like it is. We like the walls torn down because they weren't Jews. They didn't care about that. Those outside the church really don't like the church. I don't know why we're surprised. But here's what we do. He said that they were displeased. That's going to get worse as we go through the story. They started out displeased. Guys, please understand, I learned a long time ago, I don't make everybody happy. I don't. I'd like to make sure I love everybody. I want to do that. But I don't make everybody happy. But as Paul said, my purpose is to please the Lord, because that's the one I have to give account to one day when I stand before Him. That's what I do. And so he said, and when I do that, Satan's going to show up. I remember when God was doing some great things at Lindale, and the people who first complained and criticized were fellow pastors. Yeah, amazing, amazing. The guy down the road was fussing. I loved him. Matter of fact, later on, I helped train his people for evangelism, and I went out with his people to win people to Jesus. But prior to that, he was kind of like dogging, say, hey, they do this, and criticizing. Had never come talk to me, but criticized me. As pastors, I find when you do a great work, not everybody's excited. Especially Satan. He does his part. So, looking at that, you understand this. And let's read these, But when Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, the Arab, heard of our plan, they scoffed. They made fun of it. They laughed about it contemptuously. What are you doing? Are you rebelling against the king, they asked? That's verse 19. See, they begin to accuse him. That's what Satan is, the master accuser, master disruptor. He'll say things, he'll cause people to say things about they shouldn't say. So the thing we got to be aware of is guard our mouth, our tongue, what we say, how we say it. Because we're doing a great work, and we don't want to mess it up. So, we're going to talk more about these guys later. God's going to teach us something. One last story, and I'll be through. I'm going to read this verse and share a story. The God of heaven, verse 20, will help us succeed. We, do you see that? We, together, His servants, will start rebuilding this wall. Together, we fill this auditorium. Together we build a Sunday school. Together we remodel and refurbish and restore our buildings. Together we create opportunities for ministry. Together we build those ministries we have, our academy, our pre-K. We do things together. And God will get the glory. Because it's pretty hard to get everybody together. That's a God thing. God provides what we need. My last story here is this. In my second church, God had blessed us. I went there. My first church, I told you about last week, I went from 7 to 100. God did that. I didn't know what I was doing. And then he called me to a church running 60 people. And they'd already had a split and all that kind of stuff. And they called me to come there. And I still didn't know what I was doing. I'd only been pastoring 4 years. And so I'm sitting there and I go to this church. It's my first full-time church. I took a 50% cut in pay from my secular job to go there. My wife is so awesome. She said, okay. So, ironically, we'd had a house 3 miles from the church. I've been commuting to this other church 4 years from about 50 minutes away, and now this church is within 3 miles of the church, and they want me to come be their pastor, and I'm excited, and I go there. They're running 60 people. We went from 60 to 400 people. We packed the place out and all that kind of stuff, and that's just to God's glory. But I remember saying, guys, we got to do something. I remember saying we had an auditorium that really was only like this, these two places, okay? And we had Sunday school rooms in the back, 4 of them. And then we had, they had glass, and so we were packed. We needed room. And I said, guys, we need to take out those 4 rooms. And so everybody says, yes, we do, Pastor. Yes, we do. Well, let me tell you, one day I had a guy that got saved in my church. He was a contractor. He got saved. And so he began to come to church, was so excited about Jesus. And one day, he had a period of 2 days, he had nothing to do. And he comes and knocks on my door and said, Pastor, I got nothing to do for 2 days. You want to take those walls out in the back? I said, can you do that? He said, yeah, man, a couple of chainsaws. I got my guys with me. We'll do it for nothing. Won't charge anything. Yeah. Come Sunday morning, everybody was shocked. They were gone. Let me tell you how good God is. They were gone. We were going to put carpet there. We did. We eventually built a new entranceway. But the Sunday, 2 weeks after that, we had created more space. People came in and we had to put out chairs. God does a great work. Then we said we got to build an educational facility. We need a 2-story education facility because we're out of room. I went to the Christian architect, and I said, dude, what can you do this for? Here's what I need. Here's what we want. He said, well, here's what I'll do. I'll do it for 10% of what you spend on the building. He said, it's going to be about a $300,000 building. Maybe to 4, but he said, I'll do it for 10% of what you guys spend on the building. I looked at him and I said, dear brother, I appreciate that. And I want to tell you, I want to be up front with you. We will not spend that much on this building. He said, oh, yeah, you will. I said, oh, no, we're not going to spend that much. So now you might want to adjust your fee. He said, no, 10% of whatever you spend on this building. I said, all right, told you. We ain't going to do that. We're in the building. I watched my air conditioner guy come and he provided the materials and everything it cost, and he did the labor for free, him and his crew. I watched the electrical guy come in and do his labor for free and just charged us for the materials. I watched my contractor who took out the 4 walls, he did all the framework and all this, and he did it on just whenever he didn't have time. He just did it and came and we paid materials and didn't pay labor. I laughed. He said, now, Pastor, my guys, I got roofers. They're good, man. They'll come. They'll work 3 days. They work 3.5 days. When I pay, we won't see them for 2 days. I said, I understand. He said, I'm trying to help them, but you know how it is. He said, but they'll come work. And I watched us build a building. Nice building, brick. Nice. One of my guys, like my plumbing guy, did all that. And then a guy that wasn't even in church Wasn't even in church. His family came, I'd baptized his daughter, and he kind of would show up every once in a while, but he was not much of a churchgoer. But he said, Pastor, I want to give the steelwork, I'll give the stuff for the foundation, won't charge anything. So I don't mind, no, I'll pay you. No. I want to do this. I want to do this. And I'm going to tell you, we built a minimum of $300,000 structure for $100,000. That's a great work. Now understand, I'm not a carpenter, I'm not an engineer, I'm not all that stuff. I'm just sitting here, I think God can do this. I'm telling you that for you to understand the God of heaven will help us succeed if we, His servants, will start doing great work. And if we get all in, if we get all in, God's challenge is to do a great work. Our choice is to start and go all in. That's kind of it. Let's bow our heads. If you're here today and you've never had that defining moment of knowing that you've trusted Jesus Christ, or you've thought about it, maybe you've hoped you were, maybe you hoped you had, maybe you thought you'd be okay, but you never have really known, then why not today make that decision? Where you're sitting with your head bowed and your eyes closed, would you make that decision today? Right where you're sitting, just ask Jesus to save you. Man, you said, I'm not sure, I don't know, then ask Him to save you. Settle the issue. Have your defining moment of trusting Christ. That's why He came. If you've made that decision, would you, in just a minute we're going to sing an invitation to Him, would you just step out and come let me celebrate with you? Man, it'd be awesome to know that you know. And then, if you're looking for a church home, I've been praying that God would send us workers. I believe He will. And if He taps you on the shoulder today and says, man, I need you to come to this church, then man, we'd love to have you. That's between you and Him. I'm just saying you need to be obedient. Because I want you to be a part of a great work. All right? So we're going to sing just a second. Lord Jesus.